we are live with Leora Mandel, who is a marriage and family therapist, and she's also my neighbor and my friend. So I am so glad to introduce you to Leora. Leora, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, everybody. Well, I would say my first claim to fame, specifically in this context, is being Bat-Chen's friend, which is wonderful. And you can only imagine that we have wonderful conversations because Bat-Chen is a marriage advisor, and I am trained as a marriage and family therapist. And we both are very much committed to helping people's marriages be the best that they can be. Right? We always want to be able to, even for ourselves, be the best version of ourselves, have the best quality of life that we possibly can have. And so much of that is affected by the relationships that we have. And any ability to improve our relationships, even a good relationship, let alone a relationship that we feel we would really like to be better, is a wonderful opportunity. And that's what we both are very much committed to.
Yes. So fun. So Leora has a class in her house most years, not Corona year. But most years, it's been really fun to come together and have a real nice group of women learn together and discuss all these great adult conversations with their kids running around. And I think that's just a really wonderful thing. If anybody here is, sort of home with kids or has that in that season of life, it is such a good idea because it brings you up a level to being with friends, eating nice cake if you have Leora as a friend, and just being able to learn something and not just feel like you're always just in action doing things,
Very true.
So activating your brain. I appreciate that about you, Leora.
It's also connecting to women in a really deep way because we're always learning about working on ourselves, which there's always work to do. We're human becomings. Hopefully we're all in a very good place, but even a wonderful person, there's always more to work on because we aren't living in a bubble. So much of what we're working on is improving ourselves within the context of our relationship with other people. And so it's really helpful when it's almost like a support group of other women who are committed to wanting to grow and be better and work on ourselves in a positive way, trying to, again, develop new versions of ourselves, better versions of ourselves, more refined versions of ourselves. And that really is really wonderful. Now, one thing that Bat-Chen and I were discussing, we'd like to talk about today, I brought up to her, is the power of one person to change a relationship. Because I think especially when it's marriage, for example, there's two people in a marriage. Now there's also a family. There's so many outside factors that definitely can sometimes come into play in the state of relationship. But I think oftentimes you think, well, if I'm just working on myself, then it's all up to me, right? If I don't like who I am right now, I want to work on being more patient or more giving, or there's so many traits that are all attempting to improve upon. Well, that depends on me. But when there's someone else in the relationship, and it seems as though they're actually maybe the reason why I'm not as happy in this relationship, then it can feel frustrating to think, well, if they're not going to change, then how is this relationship going to get any better?
Right. And I love that. Sorry, there was one time I went to a class and Shlomit Aqua, she brought a ribbon and she tied it. And then she said, do you think I can undo the ribbon just by moving one hand? And everybody was like, no, you need both hands to untie it. And she basically went like this and around and whatever, and it came out the other way. And she didn't move the other hand at all. And she was illustrating in such a nice way that if you just do your part, you can unravel the entire thing. And everybody wins. It's like, why should I do all the work? Well, because everybody wins, And sometimes when people come to me and say, why is it that always I have to be the good one, or I have to be the adult, or I have to be the one to hold my tongue or whatever, I say, are you questioning maybe you're the one who stopped it or made it, added to the problem? Sometimes we just think, oh, I'm the good one, I'm here to fix everything. But a lot of times when we go deeper, we see that you're the one who's sort of creating the distance in a lot of cases. So
that can be true.
I question that a lot. Yeah.
But even One will say, you know what, it's not me, it's the other person. What can I do to change them?
Always the other person. I'll tell you why it's always the other person.
It's the other person. And then,
why would you take responsibility if you don't have to? It's so convenient and comfortable to say it's their fault and just leave it at that, you know? It's comfort zone.
It is. Now, again, relationships, there's a dynamic. So it's not one person. Everyone's contributing to the situation. And it is true that you are not the only one contributing. So when you say, why should I take responsibility? Even if the other person's not, there is contribution, and maybe a contribution that is feeding some of the challenges coming from the other side. But if I'm only going to focus on the other person and what they're contributing, even if it feels like it's the challenge or the problem, nothing's going to change. So it's not about right and wrong. It's about, if I want the situation to change, to improve, to become better, I can't change someone else. So this is now where we go to, what can I do to possibly make a change? I have two things about Chen. I know this is something you do, and there's so many ideas on this, but we don't want to overwhelm everybody tonight. And Bat-Chen, you will add in too. But there were 2 points that I thought were really key points that are worth putting out there to food for thought. And in both of these points are something that if it rings, a light bulb goes off and be like, you know what, that does make sense. Sometimes it's not something we can necessarily work out on our own. Sometimes that's where Bat-Chen as a marriage advisor or a marriage counselor would come in to help with it. But the first point I do want to bring out is that we all get into a certain dynamic. We have certain patterns, and we tend to get into repetitive patterns of dealing with the situation, responding to a situation, having certain routines. And sometimes this works well for us. Sometimes it works very well. And when it works well, we're happy. Things feel good.
I call it the loop.
Okay.
There's the loop that you loop around and around. We have good loops and bad loops.
That's true. But as human beings, we tend to get into certain patterns. Again, routines is a certain dynamic that we create. And sometimes we are aware of it. Sometimes like, oh, I know the dynamic. I can explain it. I can show it to you. And sometimes we're not aware of it, which again is where maybe someone helping you see after, pulling out the threads and saying, it seems like this is a pattern. And, oftentimes you're not always aware of it, but we do get into these patterns and these dynamics. And when it isn't pleasant and it's not comfortable and it's not working well, I think the saying goes, if you do what you always did, you'll get what you always got. Even though we're upset, why is this situation so frustrating? Well, we don't always realize, or maybe we do, that we keep on repeating a similar pattern. So it's no surprise that we're frustrated each time. Or I think there's also a line of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. But we do these things. We do. And again, sometimes we sort of are aware of it, but not necessarily when we're doing it. And sometimes we're not even aware of what is this pattern. But the frustration, the end result of being frustrated, we often are very familiar with. So how can one person change a situation? Because since we all get into these patterns, right?
Yeah.
One person changing what maybe they've always done, how they've always responded, the way they've always reacted or said, or again, you find a place within the pattern of I make a change. And then the other person, I can't change another person, but realistically another person will respond differently. It's like a dance where there's certain moves and someone's almost expecting me to go in a certain, that's the next move you always make. Right. And then I make a different move. They have to respond differently.
Right. And sometimes, something that is really important to remember, I think, is that it's not about what you do as much as what you think and what you believe. I work a lot on mindset and the beliefs that we have and the thoughts that are creating our feelings, because it's easier to then act differently or react differently when the entire process goes. So it's like belief creates thought creates emotion creates action. So if I want a change in action or reaction, it's going to take a lot out of me to hold that feeling in and bottle it in and really suppress it and push it down. But it's going to be a lot easier and a lot more natural. And that's where the real work is. If I could change the place where it started, the belief, and then think differently, then feel, totally, you almost neutralize the emotion by changing the thoughts and the feel and the beliefs behind them. So that's something that I really am very excited about when I do work with my clients, is like, we can change the loop from a healthy place, from a comfortable place, from a place where it feels good, and not from a place of hold your tongue, don't say anything, hold your feelings back, just let it happen, because then you end up feeling like a rag on the floor, and it's like everybody's stepping all over you and you're holding yourself back, for the sake of peace. That's not going to last very long. It's not going to work. So I really
was going to be my second important point, is exactly this point, is the way we think about a situation affects how we feel and will affect the way we respond. And this is the power of one person to change the situation, because if I can recognize, well, I feel frustrated. What am I thinking about the situation that's creating this frustration, this feeling? Because thoughts create feelings. So if I have a feeling, I have to think, what is the thought? And then when I get in touch with that thought, I think, okay, is there a way I can think about the situation differently that might help me feel differently, and then I'll respond differently, which will then change the whole atmosphere of my relationship. Again, this is where a marriage advisor can help with this, because this isn't always something we can do on our own. We're so stuck in our own thinking process. It's very circular inside of us. Sometimes we need someone to help us pull out. But let me just throw out like an example. Again, there's so many kinds of examples.
I like
but let's say a woman has a husband who works a lot, and he's not home much, and she's frustrated because she feels alone, and she feels like raising the kids is all on her. The kids aren't seeing him much, and it frustrates her a lot. And this is a real source of contention. Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's understandable the way she feels, but why is she feeling the way she feels? Because she feels like he's not home. He's just so focused on his job and climbing the ladder and making more money, and therefore, and as opposed to prioritizing wanting to spend time with the family, being there for us. What about me? These are legitimate thoughts, but those thoughts create feelings of frustration, feeling alone, disappointment. And then what does that create? An atmosphere of tension in the home that affects her, affects him, affects the relationship, affects the kids.
And the money and everything.
Everything. So this is a process, and this is, again, oftentimes one would need help to work this out. But let's just imagine that a person could take a pill. Now, there isn't such a thing, so you might need Bat-Chen to help you with this. But if you could take the magic pill that helps you change that thought, and the next morning you wake up, and instead of thinking, oh, there he is again, he's not going to be home tonight. He called again to say he's going to be late, missing dinner again. And instead it's like, you know what? Wait a minute. He's working hard. And because he's working hard, I'm able to actually spend more time at home with the kids. I only have a part-time job because he's working so hard. He's bringing more of the finances so that I can be home with the kids. And but then he's working so hard. I wish he could be with us for dinner, but he's funding all the extra tutoring for our children, bar mitzvah lessons for our son. We can make a really nice Shabbat table because, thank God, we're not struggling financially the way we used to. All of a sudden I'm thinking about that. And then, I never think about what it must be like for him. These are long hours. How would I want to feel when I came home at the end of a really long day? Would I want my wife complaining or my husband complaining, how come you're not home? You're never here. You're just working too much. Or would I want to feel like, wow, you work really hard. You put a lot of hours into making, us have this beautiful home so I can be home with the kids. So we have, plenty of food, and I don't have to worry about the checks bouncing. Appreciation, like all of a sudden this change of mindset. Now what happens? A miracle. He comes home and he's actually really surprised. His wife seems calm. She has some tea and some cake. She has dinner waiting for him. Let me hear about your day. I don't know if I told you how much I appreciate. I know you work really, really hard for us and how much it means to me. Guess what might likely happen? No, we don't know for sure. It could be he'll start actually coming home more because the atmosphere is much more pleasant to come home to. Could be part of the situation was, yes, he was working more to try to make ends meet. He was very busy at work. He is taking on a bit more than maybe he should. But part of it also was, but when he come home, he wants to come home to an unpleasant atmosphere. Right. It could also be with empathy. All of a sudden, again, my response is changing because the way I'm thinking about the situation will now change the way I feel about him, about the situation, and also the whole atmosphere in our home. So there's so many ways that this is not a one thing fits all. This is how you have to change the way you think about it. Sometimes there's other ways a person can change the way they think about something, but it's just a generic but real kind of example of how, depending on how you think about something, will affect how you feel, will affect how you respond. and can totally change the dynamics of the relationship.
Yes, yes. And you know what's amazing? Women want to fix their husbands. They're willing to do anything if you just promise them that their husband will be fixed at the end of this process. But you can't fix other people. And once, as you know, as I was starting my business a long time ago, I had this great idea. I was going to do this 90-minute session called Fix Your Husband in 90 Minutes. And people were like, what? But the concept really worked. I mean, when the people who did do it were blown away, because if you just change the way that you're believing and thinking about the whole process, the whole situation, a lot of times you let your husband off the hook from being the bad guy, because there isn't a win-lose. It's a win. We hope it would be a win-win situation. And marriage is ideally win-win. But when you blame and put him down and make him the bad guy, you automatically are in a win-lose. And that's just going to, not last and be very frustrating. So just one session at a time, and now I'm doing 6 months, which really changes it, because even though we're really delving in at each session and turning something around, when you address one thing and then the next thing and then the next thing and then the next thing, you turn around and you don't recognize what used to be like that. I can't believe that's where we were and that's where we are now. And most women, their issue of not doing it is because they don't believe it's possible.
I was just thinking about exactly this point, that so many people could be so much happier and change is possible. But exactly your point is, people think, well, since he's the problem, or there's already this such deep-rooted problems in the dynamics that we have, there's no hope. And when I think there's no hope, I never bother trying to make it.
I've tried everything, and so apparently that's it. It's over. I love those people. Those are the ones I love helping the most. If you tried everything, call me, because it really isn't the end. It's not like, okay, I tried everything and it's over, whatever. No. Every time you try something, maybe you learn something, maybe you become more aware of something, maybe it didn't fix the whole problem, but you went up a level, you got a little bit closer to understanding something. Then when you do the deep, deep work, you're able to do it in a much more mature way, as opposed to if you're just coming for the first time and be like, okay, come on, show me how do I do to fix the. You're coming from a very grounded place of like, okay, I'm ready to really commit. I'm ready to really hear what I need to do. And that's an amazing place. People who come in saying, I've already tried everything and this is my last straw, are going to be really into it, committed, and they're going to get the biggest transformations. Hi, Nicole. This is so fun. Nicole is one of my favorite people in the world, and my mother is also here, which is also fun. So yay for all of you.
I want to add that I think there are many more people that think that there is no hope for the relationship than is really true. Now, are there exceptions? Yes, unfortunately, there definitely are exceptions. And it is important to put out there, in everyone's case, even with the exceptions, everyone's case is individual. But if someone is in a relationship that is what I call a pattern of abuse, not necessarily a one-time, from time to time situation, a pattern of abuse, that would be a situation. I'm going to put out two others just again to put out there. A person has a spouse that is an untreated addiction, and doesn't seem open to treating their addiction, and and repeated infidelity. Those are three general situations, and there are exceptions. But there are a few categories of situations, and obviously there's many situations that could be not in those categories that can also be possibly, not everything is fixable. Things can still be improved.
So here's
but it's important to understand there are certain situations, but I think most people, there's so many women that are not in these specific situations that would say, oh, there's no hope. And really, there really is a lot that can be done.
Okay, so I agree with everything you said, that these things are really red lines and should be treated as such. I also want to add that if a woman is in a marriage, then she can get help no matter what. You know, it's not like, okay, that's it. You know, I'm in this issue and that's the end of it. You know, there's nothing to do. No, there is always something to do. As long as you're alive, you can change the situation you're in. You can transform your life into something way more awesome and greater and more fulfilling, because Hashem put you in this world to do something, not to sit around and be, like we said, you know, a smartoot, a rug. You are here for a reason. Hashem put you here because he needs you here. There is no mistake. So that's even a better reason why you should get help, why you should get yourself in a place where you are treating yourself properly, where your, you know, self-worth is high, where your self-confidence is high, where you're actually leaning into your gifts, because we lose out when you don't lean into yourself. Nicole, thank you. That's, you know, and I think it's really important that you brought that up. If somebody is in a situation where they're in an abusive relationship, or where their husband is constantly doing the wrong thing, and they still welcome him into the house as if it's their job or duty to bend over backwards and, like Kathy Heller says, put yourself on fire for other people to keep warm. It's not like that. This is not the way that Hashem meant the world to be. And so this is part of your test of standing up, you know, finding your voice, standing up for yourself, finding what works for you. And the truth is, sometimes just by leaning into that, you can change his behavior because of the loop. And if you can't change his behavior, that's fine too. You're still working on yourself. You're still doing what you need to be doing. So regathering your energies and putting them on what really you can control, right, the only thing you can control, will eventually change the world. Either way, whatever happens, because you can't control what else happens. You also can't control what happens when you start doing these things. From my experience, the second you start self-caring, you know, and really going into, you know, leaning into your own strengths, the doors start to open, and things start to happen, and everything just sort of starts flourishing in front of you, and you're like, what? So it will surprise you too, but you have to start doing it. You have to take the first step and you know, take the nap you needed, or whatever it is. Take the time for yourself to reground, regroup, take a walk, whatever it is that is for you, the basic self-care, you know? And in all the situations that you mentioned, that is one thing that I feel very passionate about, helping those women, because they have so much to give. They are here for such a much bigger reason than they think, you know? And
this is also proper guidance for the counselor advisor is important, because when we're talking about even change the way I think, will change the way I feel, will change the way I respond, will change the atmosphere, there's tremendous truth to that, but you also have to use it the right way. It can be used the wrong way. Because, for example, a woman in an abusive relationship, she said, oh, well, if I just change the way I think about, you know, myself or him, what's happening, and I change what I say to him and realize, no, you know, that can be going in the wrong direction of continuing to allow yourself to be used poorly and crossing red lines. So it's important that even these tools are used with help, so that you can be used in a healthy way to help guide you out of where you are, but to the better place that you want to be.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons why I love that I'm not just, you know, there's a lot of marriage advisors and coaches and whatever, relationship coaches. I add on to that Hashem and the Jewish way of what?
It's a whole perspective.
Yeah.
Living our lives.
Jewish perspective, Hashem is a lens to basically really know, because then you're grounded. You know, Hashem's my rock, so I'm not moving. I'm not going anywhere. So I know exactly what I need to be doing. So I have very clear directions, and I can't get lost when I'm connected. That's why it's called Connected for Real, right? It's, if you're connected for real on a practical level, where you bring Hashem into every little thing, you're not going to fall into those things where it's like, oh, I guess Hashem just wants me to just be sitting here, you know, being the victim. It's actually not true. Hashem does not want that. Hashem wants you to learn to get out of the comfort zone, and to get over your fear and to really shine. He wants you to shine. And that's, and we're talking about extreme cases, but thank God most people are sitting here saying, okay, that's very nice. I want you to shine too. The point is that in an extreme case, then you really do. That's where you see the test of what your tools and your outlook. But in regular situations, when a woman is just, I don't know, feeling like her husband's holding her back from success, or he doesn't want her to go out and be more successful than she already is because he fears that maybe it will affect his marriage. So those are regular, normal situations that we deal with every day. And those two are, bring yourself back to what you can control and how you can lean into the gifts that Hashem gave you and accept that you can't change reality.
It's true. And you can't change someone else, even though changing myself, often someone will respond differently to me. But something that I hear, especially we're talking about, again, there's so many situations where the marriage could be so much better and so much improved, but people just get frustrated and hopeless and think, but there's no way this could get better. Why should I even bother trying to get help? He's not willing to come with me, so what's the point of just one person? I mean, there's so many situations where it frustrates me because you think people could have better marriages. There's so many people in the category of people who their marriage could be so much better and happier and really wonderful, but we don't always, we're hopeless as opposed to recognizing there's a hope. So something that I hear a lot is situations where someone will say, well, this situation is never going to change. It's never going to change, or he's never going to change in this area. So there is such a thing called, we call them gridlock issues. There are issues where you might be right. This may never change. The question is, even recognizing it may never change, what we end up doing with situations that may never change is what happens is it starts taking over, and that's all we see, right? And there's other good things in the relation, and this happens with our kids too, by the way. Unfortunately, because I have family too. So as a family therapist, a lot of times when people do come in with their children, and when there's a challenge and a problem, all the parent keeps saying is the problem, the challenge. And one of the first steps that we do, and this applies to marriage too, it goes both ways, is I really have to help guide the parent to start seeing exceptions to the problem. What are other strengths the child has? What are the good qualities of your child? Because when something frustrates us, again, all of a sudden, it's all that we see. And I'm not saying it might not be a big issue, but sometimes it doesn't have to be a big issue, but we make it one by, it's like, I can't see much of my hands are like this. This is all I'm looking at.
Right.
So
you know what you reminded me of? Sorry. You reminded me of Lilach, my sister, is an audiologist, and she has a podcast called All About Audiology. And one of the cool things she has is a meditation, a guided meditation that I guess people could download. I'll have to ask her for the link. And it's seeing your child, for who he is. Being that she helps families of children with hearing loss, all they see is the hearing loss. And they just see this kid, and either he's deaf or he has hearing loss, and all they see is this problem. And they just don't see the kid. And this beautiful meditation of just see him for being a kid, for who he is, for all the beautiful things that he's doing, because the second you get a diagnosis, that's it, it's over, and it's really important to be able to look at those things. So you just reminded me of that. And it's such an important point. Another thing is
something I can do.
What'd you say?
That's something I can do. The person may never change. This aspect of our relationship or this character trait or whatever, it may never change. Meaning there are times where, yes, I change the way I respond and things start to change. I change the way I think, which will change the way I respond. Things change. But there are times where I can do all that and there just may be something that will not change. But at the same time, as we're saying, is we tend to just focus so much on that thing instead of what I can do is pull back and say, right, this bothers me. The more I think about it, the bigger it grows. And then I'm not having a relationship because it takes over. As opposed to recognizing, right, this thing bothers me, but let's put it in its place. It takes up a certain amount of space, but there's all this other space now if I can put in its place that can be filled up with positive, good things, and I will be a much happier person, a happier wife, a happier mother, right, in whatever relationship I'm working on in this with, if I can make this thing my hands, a lot smaller. And then all the space it was taking up, very conscientiously, filled with focusing on other things that would bring joy and happiness that are positive and good.
Yes. So I know you like my quotes. So I remember there's one quote that says, what you water grows, and where you put your energy and where you pay attention, that's going to grow. So the more you water what's going wrong and what's not okay, that's all you're going to see. And the same is true for the good things. When you start being grateful and you make lists of the things that are actually there, that are good, or maybe they're just, neutral, suddenly you start seeing more and more of that. And that's how we grow our muscle of, Ayin Tovah, which is, seeing good in people. And the other thing is, we were talking before about thoughts, and I want to just remind everyone, you can think on purpose. You don't have to buy everything your brain is telling you just because that's what came up. So thoughts will just come and go. It's like, we think, I don't know how many millions of thoughts a day. They're going to come, they're going to go, they're going to go through, and some of them are going to stick, and they're going to try holding hard, and they're going to try and show you why you should believe them because they're here. But you don't have to. You can choose to think thoughts on purpose and really create thoughts. Start the day by saying what you want to think, by creating an intention. And in yoga, she does this, and it's really fun. It's just like, today I want to feel grounded. And then the whole day you're walking around like feeling the ground and recentering yourself. And it really makes a difference when you think on purpose. So that was a point I wanted to throw out there for all those of you who love practicality, because I'm very practical.
I want to share something, because it's something I've been working on myself. And a lot of the things we work within ourselves really affect our relationships too.
Oh,
but one of the things right?
That sounds like the thing I do.
So
there's not much to work on other people. That's all you have is to work on yourself.
It's true. So in the past, if I'd be in a frustrating situation, I'd be just, feeling annoyed, aggravated, and then of course you come home with it, affects your day.
Right.
Whether you realize it or not, it does. Sometimes we're aware that we're a bit shorter with our kids or with our spouse because we're just carrying this aggravation with us. And why is something frustrated? It feels like there was no point. There was no point. Mm-hmm. But this is actually something I learned from Rabbi David Aaron, and and this is connected for real too with God, is that if we recognize that Hashem is sending us what it is that we're going through. So like as an example, I once went to, I needed a referral from my doctor, and I waited almost an hour. It was a pediatrician for one of my kids. And then finally when I came in, I didn't have something that I needed. I had no idea I needed it. And so I was going to have to come back. And I was frustrated because I was annoyed, and not with her, just like it was just a frustrating situation. And of course, these are the kinds of day-to-day things that can carry on and da-da. I was like, well, because I felt like I wasted my time. But Rabbi Aaron had said, he said, see, sometimes we think we're going for one thing. I thought I was going for the referral, but God had other plans. God gave me an opportunity to work on my patience that day. And that might have been more worthwhile. That opportunity to work on patience might have been more worth it and more to my benefit than had I not had to wait almost an hour, had I gotten the referral right away. Meaning these situations come up, but if instead of just seeing it as a frustration, an aggravation, changing the way I think is saying these very frustrations are actually opportunities. Because again, I can say, oh, I feel great about myself. I was so patient today. Right? Yeah. I say that, but then what happened today? Nothing tested my patience. How much does that mean? But if I say, oh, I feel great about myself. I had such patience. And actually this happened to me yesterday. Yeah, it was yesterday. And I did feel good, but I was tested. And in fact, it was a silly thing. I was at the supermarket and there were only a few checkouts and there were really long lines. And there were 3 people in front of me. And then at a certain point, there were 3 people behind me. But then it happened to be in the slow line, of course. And then 2 more registers opened up. So the people who came in behind me got out like 15 minutes before I got out because I got stuck. Okay, so I was frustrated. But then all of a sudden it hit me. I was like, wait a minute, ConnectedForReal, bring Hashem into the picture. It's like, Hashem, this is my opportunity to work on patience. And it was amazing how just changing the situation of bringing Hashem into it, recognizing instead of just frustration, pointless, wasting my time, opportunity to work on patience.
Yes.
Changed the way I felt about it. I came home, I told my kids, I said, guess what? Mommy had an opportunity to work on patience today.
And isn't that beautiful? Because one thing that I really like about you is how you you show your kids the real cards. It's, your kids know that life is life, and that today I had a hard day, or today I had this thing, or whatever. And you telling them what's going through your head, and how at first I was upset and I was annoyed, and now I had suddenly thought about it and it clicked, and then I decided I'm going to work on patience, and then everything went so smoothly and I felt like I was in a flow. And your kids are seeing this and they can really feel okay. A lot of times what happens is we think of our parents as these perfect beings, and when we start living real life and things don't go the way we want and things aren't as perfect for us, then we get really discouraged. We think something is wrong. We think that we're broken, that something isn't right with us. But really, it's just life, and it's a muscle that we have to grow. So I think that's really important. I love that you do that. I love that you're able to model. That's the word I was looking for. You're able to model for your kids the entire process that's going inside.
Well, the tools for life is very much what I'm about from a parenting perspective too, with the family therapy side of things, because I feel like the more tools we can give our children, then the better. They're already more equipped to deal with life as they, again, age appropriate, but as they get to certain points. And as we all know, sometimes we try to cushion our children. We're in the family side of things, but we'll cushion our children. We want to protect them, but in the end, sometimes what we're trying to do to protect actually harms, because there is going to be frustration in life, and being able to handle and deal with it effectively. And I think as a person, not being destroyed by it is really important for life.
Yeah. And I think that one of the things that, what was I going to say? Okay, I'll get back to my thought. If anybody has any questions, put them in the chat below, because we are going to answer them the next 10 minutes. And if not, then that's going to be the end. And I wanted to say something, but you can keep going and maybe I'll think of it.
So one thing I want to emphasize again, and I know Bat-Chen, you're doing amazing work with women, is that I hope some of the tools and the points we're sharing here really, like, set a light bulb off again. For any women that might have felt frustrated, or feel like maybe there's no hope, or why should I bother trying to get help, or I'm not, who has time to get help. But on the other hand, to recognize that marriage is such a foundation, such an essential aspect of your personal life, your family's life, and oftentimes just reaching out for help. Again, reaching out for help.
Thank you.
All the difference. There's so many tools out there, but a lot of times we cannot do this ourselves because we're so stuck in a situation. It's like, again, if I'm like this, I can't see beyond it. And sometimes I need someone else to help hear me and pull me out of my own circular thinking and thought process of, I don't even see, again, I can feel like there's no hope. Apologize. I don't see, I'm so focused on the problem, I can't recognize there could be solutions out there. And sometimes it's someone else who can try to hear me out and then help me see, actually, there are some solutions.
Right. I think also, I hired a coach too. I think that coaching in general is just a really good way to move forward systematically, and not, every time you hit a stone, you don't know what to do next, and then it just paralyzes you. I know that that's how it is with me. I really like that somebody else has tools that I don't have, because then I can learn new things and I can grow and I can constantly continue. It sort of is something that's very built into the system, that I know I'm going to have somebody to ask. I know I'm going to have a time when I'm going to talk about this and get it to the next level and go up a level and up a level. I'm not stuck, because when I'm stuck, just in general, I paralyze and I'm like, okay, that's it, it's over. I don't know what else to do. And I have to go through this for a while until I could get myself out of it and use the tools that I help other people use to help myself, so that's why I have a journal and I do a lot of self-help. But I find that having another person is so important, because first of all, it's fun. It's fun to have a conversation with a real human being and getting their input. And, that's something that my father always said about marriage, is that, the husband and the wife, they could be standing across from each other. And if there's a ball in the middle, one sees one side and the other sees the other side. And by communicating, they're going to be able to really see both sides. But only if they can communicate properly what they see and be curious enough to hear what the other person sees. And so it's the same thing where you have two people working on a situation. It just unravels in such a calm and easy way, as opposed to you having to like crack it open by yourself with the tools you have, just because you're lacking that, specific key or whatever tool to unlock it. So
I think it's interesting because, especially in society, there's such an emphasis on education, which is a very good thing. I'm not saying that it's not, but I think there's not enough emphasis on educating ourselves. And I think if a person's going to become a teacher, pharmacist, I mean, there's certain things that are more complex, the more schooling you have to go through, the more classes you have to take. And then there's one thing to learn it in theory, and like a doctor. Family, my brother-in-law is a doctor, and he said he had he finished his schooling, but he felt like he didn't trust himself at all to be a doctor. Now he's doing his internship, because there's a difference between the theory and there's a difference between practically seeing what it is you theoretically learned about. But it never ends, because if you want to be a good doctor, you're always learning, you're always working, you're right. There's always more to learn. And I think marriage is very similar in parenting. I put both in those category of, it is so important. I think more important than whatever education we get for our career. As much as there's this emphasis in society about your career is what's going to make you happy, reality is it's actually not. It's meaningful relationships. And the most meaningful relationships are the ones you have with your spouse, with your children, with your parents, family relationships. And so the more we can do to get the tools and then know practically how to apply them in our personal lives, so that we can have happier, more balanced relationships, the happier and the more fulfilled and the more productive we'll be. And it actually does carry out, I think, also in the career too. But I think we have it backwards, that really the focus is on making, but it takes a commitment to say, you know what, that's why I like your 6-month idea, because it takes commitment to say, I really want to work on this. I really want to make the changes. I'm going to commit. It doesn't mean sometimes it is hard work. Sometimes it's not hard work, but it's commitment to saying, I want things to be better.
Right. Sometimes, we think that it's going to be hard work, and really all it is just strategy. Just knowing that you have to take a right and then a left and then, walk straight and continue. You just don't know, because you have no idea. So you think you're going to have to trudge the whole hill, but really there's a shortcut, or there's, a different road that is easier to take. And those are things you're just not aware of. That's why I love that I have a coach, and my coach has a coach, and, everybody needs somebody to show them the way, to help them through this stuff, because I am not only helping one person, I'm helping many people. And so I see patterns, and I see what works, and I see how certain things are just really much easier in the big scheme of things, from the bird's eye view.
And sometimes it is easier when I just focus on myself, because I think like the long road can be a problem. But I think we have to recognize this is part of human nature. I don't blame Chava, Chava blame the snake, Cain blame Hevel, meaning everyone's blaming somebody else for where the problems are. But sometimes I think the shortcut can be saying, you know what? We don't see ourselves, because there's natural human nature. We're focused on where someone else, because we can see them, right? I'm in myself. This is again why I think a coach, an advisor, can be helpful to help come out of me and help guide me. But it's very much easier to see someone else where they're maybe creating certain dynamics that are creating challenges in the relationship, because they're outside of me. But the coach can come in to help us see where is maybe one little strategy change can make all the difference. And I didn't see, even as an example. Okay, another practical possible example. Talking about dynamics. Let's say your husband's supposed to be the one to take care of the finances, and he does a good job when he gets to it, but he often doesn't get to it. Sometimes things have been late payments, and he gets you very frustrated. It's not your strength, and you are always reminding him, you take care of the bills. You take care of the bills. We don't want it. Okay, not pleasant. You just do it already. Why can't you just get it done? Why does he have to procrastinate? And then you speak to Bat-Chen, and she helps you come up. Okay, this is our pattern. I remind him and I nag him, and eventually it gets done, but it's unpleasant, or okay, there's more details to patterns, but let's just leave it at that. And then you think, wait a minute, okay, he doesn't get done. He always says, I don't have time, I don't have time, I don't have time. Well, maybe he doesn't really have time. Stop nagging him. Nagging is not going to give him more time, so let me give him more time. You say, honey, guess what? I'm going to take Chaim to his bar mitzvah lesson today. I know you should do that, and I appreciate it. And I'm going to take all the kids out of the house, and that way you can have an hour and a half quiet, that usually you'd be out taking him to his bar mitzvah lessons so that the bills can get done. And you'll feel good that it's done. I'll feel great that it's done. I so appreciate it. And then I'm going to stop at the bakery on the way home to get something, though, that tonight we'll have tea and cake and we can really celebrate that now it's done for the month. All of a sudden, instead of the, when are you going to do it? When are you going to do it? He's always procrastinating. He's never getting it done. Why him? It's like, well, what can I do? Maybe this is what I always do. How can I change what I've always done? But maybe there'll be a different result. Now, you may think this is brilliant. Wow, I got to try this. This will work. And maybe you'll say this would never work for me. It's, again, this is where a marriage advisor comes in, because each person's situation is different, but the principle is the same of trying something different, getting out of that pattern that has always doing the same thing, getting the same results, ending frustrated. Finding a different way to approach it, where, again, sometimes we don't see it, and we need someone else to help us see, well, this is how you've always done it. No wonder you're always frustrated. Let's see if something else might work. And then you have happy people.
So I love that you brought up money and marriage, because tomorrow's live is with Yael Trush, and she is the queen of money. And one of the biggest things she talks about is money and money dates. Where you actually sit down and have to have a real conversation about what's going on with money, whatever. But she is just awesome. You definitely don't want to miss tomorrow's live. And Leora, I want you to end on a very practical note, something that everybody could do today, tomorrow, to improve their marriage in just any little way.
Okay. The practical note is that any relationship we're happy in, it's because there's more positive things going on in that relationship than negative. Even a happy relationship. I have a great friend. Sometimes she runs a bit late and it annoys me, but she's a great person. We get along. If I focus on what annoys me, I'm going to be frustrated. If I focus on what's great about the person, I'll be happy in the relationship. So recognizing that any relationship, the more positives there are, that is what determines if this relationship is feeling good versus not. So that's something that practically I can work on, because, again, I'm not trying to change the negatives. I'm saying, how do I start to very conscientiously focus on the positive parts of the person, the positive parts of our relationship? And the more I can do that, the happier I will be in my relationship.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. So sometimes what I do with my clients is we look at why it's so hard for me to let go of the negatives. There's something there's a lesson that is stuck together with that memory, almost like a trauma. In NLP, they explain that the brain, in order to remember things, it will encapsulate the situation with a lesson. And so not to touch fire because it burned you once. And so there's a very important lesson there. You don't want to stop being scared of fire, So there's a lot of resistance under the surface that is just trying to help us with, keeping us safe and keeping all these lessons in place. So when you can unlock that, take the lesson, make sure you learn what you need to learn, and then let the stuff just sort of settle. It makes your life so much easier to navigate, because you're no longer reliving every single thing over and over again, because once it's capsulated, it feels like it was yesterday, even if it was 20 years ago. That's why we have all these lists of memories that we're so annoyed. And when my husband could do something and I could just snap about something that he did 10 years ago. Like, don't you remember you did that? And now you're doing it again. He's like, what?
Triggers something.
So that's exactly what a trigger is. It's you're tapping on that memory, and because the lesson is so important, you're not willing to let it go. So I work a lot, the focusing on the good is really important, but we also work on trying to unpack why it is that it's so hard for me to stop seeing all the things that I'm seeing, to stop focusing. Why is it that I can't let go? So I think that's something that is
very much the work of what therapy and coaching are all about. But right. I think as much as I definitely think this is very important, because we do get stuck, but even just, again, making the commitment. And when I see I'm stuck, this is where, if I'm already in therapy or in counseling or in coaching, or maybe I'll recognize I could benefit from it. But even just making the commitment, because it's like, there's a lot of great things, but if I don't consciously say, like even when you remember you were working on gratitude, Bat-Chen did something great, the gratitude jar. Sometimes I just have to, and I recognize, this can make a big difference in my happiness, self-care. I have to commit to it. It's about making a commitment to say, you know what, I recognize and it has to be conscious. It may not be natural to me, but it doesn't have to be natural. Consciously, I want to start working on this because, again, if I would say I want to be happier, I want to feel more positive, the way to feel more positive is to focus on, I want my relationship to be more positive.
Right.
By choosing conscientiously to say, I'm going to start focusing on the things that bring me joy, that make me feel more positive, doing things for myself that help me feel positive about me,
right,
everything will change.
Yeah. Oh, Leora, we could talk forever, but it's, over time. So we're going to end it here. Thank you all for watching. If you're watching live, it was awesome having you here. If you're watching the replay, I'm really grateful that you're doing that because it really is. This is the reason why we're doing it. And we're happy that you're here. Tomorrow at exactly, I think it's at 8 o'clock, not at 9. So it's an hour earlier. We are having the awesome Yael Trush and all about marriage and money. And that's going to be a really big one because I love that she is so in touch with Hashem and why we're here in the first place. So there's a lot of deep stuff that we are going to be talking about. We also agree on a lot of things. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And make sure that you like and subscribe and get in touch with me if you want to work with me, ConnectedForReal.com or ConnectedForReal on Instagram, on Facebook. You guys got it. You're awesome. Thanks so much. Have a great night. And thank you, Leora.
Thank you, Bat-Chen. I always love talking to you.
Thank you.